ನಾನು ಶೇರ್ ಮಾಡಿದ್ನಲ್ಲ ಗೂಗಲ್ ಕ್ಲಾಸ್ ರೂಮ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ. ಗುಡ್ ಮಾರ್ನಿಂಗ್ all. In the last class we were discussing about another example of four system intelligence distribution. So before that, what we discussed in the previous class, what are the topics you studied in the third chapter? What are the topics you studied in the third chapter?
Yes, ma'am.
What are the topics you studied in this chapter?
God.
First, we have started with differences in application topologies. Then second topic you have studied is when the action oriented paradigm goes right. And third topic you have studied is the guard class problem. There we are considered the behavioral form for the guard class problem, right? So today you're going to study about another example of system intelligence distribution. Part of this I already explained in the previous class, right? So here we are going to study the examples for poor system intelligence distribution. Here we are considering an example of a home heating system. That is, it's a domain of a forced hot water oil-fired home heating system. So, since the author is a foreign author and he is considering his country environment, so since if it is a cold country, then we need the home heating system that is considered. But in Indian scenario, that is not required, right? But still, we'll study that as an example. So, how we can construct the objects and classes for the home heating system. Then we'll see what are the heuristics it violates when we follow the first stage of design. Then after that, how we can avoid the violation of heuristics. Okay. So first we'll see for the home heating systems, what are the requirements? What are the basic requirements for the home heating system? So if you consider a home heating system, means home, it consisting of different rooms, hall, kitchen, etc. Right? So here we're basically concentrating on heating the room. Okay, whenever the room temperature is below the desired temperature, right? So for that, what are the basic requirements we require? So in essence, we are finding the temperature in the room. So room should have a temperature input device, then the actual temperature sensor and the occupancy sensor. Temperature sensor for sensing the current temperature of that particular room, and the occupancy sensor to find whether any person inside the room or not. Okay, or whether the room is empty or it is occupied by some person or not. To detect that, we are using the occupancy sensor. And we need the heat flow regulator. Okay, we need the heat flow regulator, which is responsible for sensing when the room needs the heat. Okay, so what is the responsibility of heat flow regulator? Heat flow regulator is responsible for sensing the heat, sensing when each room needs the heat. Okay, means so if the room temperature is below the desired temperature, then it sends a heat flow regulator sense that, then it turns on the furnace and wait for the water to heat up and then tells the room that the heat is available. So for example, if you consider that in a room, the normal temperature we require is, let us consider that 30 degree. Okay, if the room temperature is 20 degree, then what is the desired temperature? We require 30 degree. Then the sensor detects the desired, actual temperature, that is 20 degree. Then it compares with the desired temperature. What is the desired temperature? 30 degree. Then it compares that, and if the sensed actual temperature is less than the desired temperature, then that information is given to the heat flow regulator. Then once the heat flow regulator gets that information, it switch on the furnace, okay, and this heat flow regulator waits for the water to heat up. Then once the water is heated up, then it informs the room that the heat is available. Understood? But before heating the room, we have to check whether the room is occupied by a person or not. So for that purpose, we are using the occupancy sensor, right? So through the occupancy sensor, we detect that whether the person is in the room or not. If he is in the room, then only we are heating up the room according to the desired temperature. If nobody is in the room or if the room is empty, no need to heat up the room even though the room temperature is falls below the desired temperature. Understood? So this is the scenario. So what we make is when we started with designing the system. When we started with designing the system, here four classes are created. One is called as the heat flow regulator, second one is the desired temperature developer, or I can say desired temperature device and actual temperature device and occupancy sensor. Here, the heat flow regulator, see this is the heat flow regulator. This sends the message to other three classes. Which are the other three classes? It sends the message to desired temperature device, actual temperature device and occupancy sensor to determine if the room needs the heat or not. Once it gets the information from these sensors, then it decides whether the room to be heated up or not. So here, once again, the problem with this design is it results in the guard class. Here, the heat flow regulator becomes the guard class in this particular design. Why? Because it performs most of the work when compared to the remaining three classes. So because it gets the information about the actual temperature, desired temperature, whether the room is occupied by or not. So it gets that information, means it is most of the work will be done by the heat flow regulator, whereas the remaining three classes, desired temperature, actual temperature and occupancy sensor, performs a relatively little work when compared to heat flow regulator. Then we say that the heat flow regulator is a guard class. So if we follow this design, then it leads to a problem of guard class, or it leads to guard class problem. Understood? When we say that it is a guard class problem, that one of the class will perform most of the work and the remaining common classes will perform very little work. Then the class which is performing most of the work is said to be a guard class. Okay, and the problem is called as the guard class problem. But whenever we are designing a system, then we should avoid the guard class problem, right? Because it simply violates the heuristics. And if you follow this design violates the heuristic 3.1 on distributing system intelligence. Understood now? Then what might be the solution for this? And once again, see here the common mistake what we are doing when we are defining the classes in the design phase. See here, four classes are defined, are created, but nobody is putting concentration on creating the room class. Why? Because the room is a very important thing here. Because whatever the temperature we are checking, which is within the room, and whatever the occupancy we are checking, that is within the room. So that is not created here. The room class is not created, and that leads to a guard class problem, right? Then what the object oriented design developers will do? Immediately they are going to create a new class called as the room class. Okay, immediately the developers create the new class called as the room, and each room object contains an object of each sensor. Then the room can encapsulate the three objects to facilitate the construction of more rooms. So here what are the three objects we have? Desired temperature, actual temperature and the occupancy. Okay, but once again, here if you follow this design, once again the errors occurs. See here, because in this design the room is given the different operations such as get actual temperature, get desired temperature, set desired temperature, and is occupied. So these operations are performed in the, or these operations are given to the room class, but that should not be, right? And once the operations are given to this room class, then the heat flow regulator asks the room about the actual temperature, desired temperature, and it asks about whether the room is occupied by a person or not. Okay, so everything is performed at the room class. But all the information the heat flow regulator collects from the room, then it computes the information. According to that, it decides whether the room requires heat or not. Okay. So here, after collecting this information, the heat flow regulator computes the, means after collecting the desired temperature, actual temperature, then the heat flow regulator computes the value and decides whether the room requires the heat or not. Okay, and once again, even if you follow this design, once again this leads to a guard class problem. Why? Because once again the guard class is created, that is heat flow regulator, and it is performing most of the computation or most of the work. Why? It gets the information from the room about the actual temperature, desired temperature, and the occupancy, then it performs the computations. Okay, heat flow regulator itself performs the computations, then it decides whether the room can be whether the room requires the heat or not. So once again, this is related to the guard class problem. So because here heat flow regulator is still a guard class, and it most of the work is performed by the heat flow regulator itself, and the designer has failed to keep the related data with its behavior. Okay, related data is not available, even though the heat flow regulator is performing the most of the work or most of the operations. So in order to solve this problem, we are moving on to the best solution, and in this solution we are giving the control to the room itself. Here the room itself has to decide whether it requires the heat or not, because it has all of the necessary data encapsulated within the that particular room class. Okay, so here either the heat flow regulator ask each room whether if the room requires the heat or not, or the room object itself demands for the heat from the heat flow regulator. Okay, so here if you consider these two previous design, so here there is no encapsulation or the absence of distributed system intelligence, and in this system also, hence we are going for the better solution where that design consisting of a distributed intelligence behavior. Okay, so here the control is given to the room itself. Here the room can decide whether it requires the heat or not. Based on that, it can demand the heat from the heat flow regulator, or the heat flow regulator can ask each room that whether the room requires the heat or not. Okay, so if the room requires the heat, then the heat flow regulator asks the furnace to heat up the water. Once the water gets heated up, then the room is will inform the room that it is getting up heat. Okay, so here you'll see that the system is having the distributed intelligence, because here the control is given either to the room or to the heat flow regulator. The room can itself demand for the heat, or the heat flow regulator can ask the room whether it requires the heat or not. Okay, so this is about the example of home heated system with and without distributed intelligence. So in the previous design, there was absence of distributed intelligence, and hence we'll move on to the better solution where the distributed intelligence is present. Any doubt in this? Yes, Impana, Prithvi, Sudeep, Niharika. Any doubt?
No, ma'am.
Okay.
Right.
Then okay. Then I'll move on to the heuristic related to that example. Heuristic 3.6 says that model the real world whenever possible, and this heuristic is often violated for reasons of system intelligence distribution, avoidance of guard classes, and keeping of related data and behavior in one place. Okay. See here, model the real world whenever it is possible, right? If you follow that, then this cannot be there. But if you want the system intelligence distribution avoidance of guard classes or keeping the related data and behavior, then the heuristic 3.6 gets violated. Okay. We'll see what it says. The heuristic 3.6 is motivated by the desire for a maintenance person to be able to directly relate to the architecture of the system. Means this is basically designed for the maintenance person so that he can he can able to directly relate to the architecture of the system. And here once again we are considering the example of a home eating system. Here that home eating system is used as an exercise for many groups, and when it is given as the exercise for many groups, and many groups have the heated discussion about the creation of the room class. Some groups argues that room class is required, or some groups argues that room class is not really required. See here, some members of the group requires that argues that room is not required. Why? They say that the room is not doing anything in the real world, and hence the room should not be created or declared as a class. But other members or other groups argues that the room class is necessary. Why? Because room class is necessary for encapsulation and intelligence distribution. If you want to have the encapsulation or the intelligence distribution, then we have to create the room as the class. Here, the modeling of the real world is desirable but not necessarily as important as other heuristics. And hence, some designers reconcile this problem. Means, as I said, some groups argues that room to be considered as a class, and some groups argues that room cannot be considered as a class. Now, to avoid that argument, what the designers have done, some designers reconcile that problem and they rename the room class into the room controller or thermostat or room mechanism. So instead of declaring it as a room class, the designers created another class named as the room controller or thermostat or room mechanism instead of using the room class. Okay. So in a design critic, it is important that individuals realize when they are arguing about some interesting and important design decisions and when they are only arguing about the name of the class. So that is important because whenever we are following the designs and when many groups are involved in design in the system, obviously argument takes place. But we should be careful when we are arguing that we should arguing about the some interesting and important design decisions, and whether they are simply arguing about the name or the important design decisions, and that we need to consider. And as I said, many hours of design critique are wasted by confusion between the design issues and other matters such as class names. But that is not really required, right? Class names. Arguing about the class names, that is not really required. If we trick, then if they argue, then it is simply leads to the wastage of the time, right? Because we need to argue about the design issues, not about the class names. So this is about heuristic 3.6. Next we'll move on to the guard class problem. Right? The guard class problem that we are discussing in terms of the data form. Previously, yes, discussed the guard class problem with respect to the behavioral form. Here we are going to study the guard class problem with respect to data form. So when the guard class problem arises, so the guard problem occurs when a designer is migrating legacy system to a new object-oriented design. Or we say that the guard class problem occurs when the designer is migrating from a legacy system, means older system, to a new object-oriented design. Legacy system, if you consider it as a what type of system it is in? So we are discussing now it is a object oriented design. Before that, so it is a object oriented design, right? So when it is moving to the object oriented design, so from which old design it is moving into new object oriented design? Yes, ಕೇಳಿಸ್ತಾ ಇದೆಯಾ ನಾನು ಮಾತಾಡ್ತಾ ಇರೋದು? ಎಸ್ ಪ್ರಣತಿ, ಹಲೋ, ಕ್ಲಾಸ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಇದೀರಾ ತಾನೆ?
ಎಸ್ ಮ್ಯಾಮ್.
ಮಾತಾಡ್ರಿ, ನನ್ ಅಷ್ಟು ಕೇಳ್ತಾ ಇದ್ರೆ ಅಟ್ಲೀಸ್ಟ್ ನನ್ ವಾಯ್ಸ್ ಕೇಳಿಸ್ತಿದೆಯಾ ಇಲ್ಲ ಅಂತಾನು ನೀವು ಆನ್ಸರ್ ಮಾಡೋದಿಲ್ಲಲ್ಲ. ಸುಮ್ನೆ ಕನೆಕ್ಟ್ ಮಾಡ್ಕೊಂಡು ಎಲ್ಲ ಹೋಗ್ಬಿಟ್ಟಿರ್ತಿರ್ವಾ, ಏನ್ ಕತೆ ನಂಗೆ ಅರ್ಥ ಆಗ್ತಿಲ್ಲ. ಅಟ್ಲೀಸ್ಟ್ ಎಸ್ ಸರ್ ನೋ ಅಂತ ಆನ್ಸರ್ ಹೇಳ್ಬೇಕಲ್ವಾ ನೀವು? ಸೊ ಐ ಆಸ್ಕ್ಡ್ ದಟ್ the guard class problem occurs when the designers are moving from the older design system to a new object oriented design. Which was the older system design? From the first chapter itself we are studying two types of designs. First one is action oriented design, second one is the object oriented design. Yes, so before one is the action oriented design or action oriented approach. So when the designers are migrating from action oriented design to a new object oriented design, then the guard class problem arises. Understand? Because here there is an enormous interest in finding a good process for this migration, since it is rare that a software developer gets to design a new system from the beginning. So means whenever the new approach is developed or whenever the new method is developed, all the designers are interested in using that are interested to use that in their design of the systems, right? So hence whenever the developers are getting to the new design systems from the beginning, then the guard class problem arises. And this legacy system is often fraught with many existing problems which needs to be addressed. That we'll see later. Okay, so first we'll see what the guard class problem and how we can avoid the guard class problem with the help of the object oriented design. So first we'll consider a legacy system as an example, then how that can be redesigned by using the object oriented design. Here, let us consider an example of call processing. Excuse me. Here, we are considering an example of a call processing system. And this is an example for a legacy system. Clear? And see this system which consisting of large global data structure. Okay. Here it consisting of large global data structure, and we have the call processing blocks and a number of call processing functions. Okay, so let us consider this legacy system as an example. In this example, we are talking about the call processing system. Here the call processing system consisting of call processing blocks and number of call processing functions, where this call processing block is nothing but a global data structure. What it is, the global data structure, it contained all of the data that call processing functions need in order to fulfill their requirements. Means the global data structure consisting of all the data which is required for performing function 1, function 2 up to function 7. Whenever these functions are called, okay, whenever the function 1, 2, 3 or 7 are called, in order to perform their operations, these functions make use of the data which is present in the form of a global data structure. Okay, so each of these function use the data, whichever data is required for their operations, and they use this data directly from the global data structure. Understood? Now let us consider that function 3 is called. In order to perform the operation, function 3 needs data 3. Okay, function 3 needs data 3. So whenever this function is called, it is running and it makes use of the data, or it access the data 3 which is present in the global data structure. Understood? And uses this. Clear? So this is the legacy system. In the legacy system, it is the legacy system, or if we say that it's action oriented system, the main characteristic of action oriented system is centralized control mechanism. So it is a centralized control mechanism. So even if n number of functions are created, but all the data required by these functions are placed in the centralized manner. Okay, because all the data is present or placed in the form of a global data structure, and data structure is accessed by all the functions whenever they require. Understood? Because in order to perform the operations by all these functions directly access the data from the global data structure. So this is an example for a legacy system. Then, when the designer team decided to migrate from the old system to a new object-oriented system, first they encapsulate the call processing block in a class and added accessor methods for each of the data members. See here, the call processing block is encapsulated. See, the call processing block is encapsulated and accessor methods are added for each of the data members. See here, the accessor methods like get data, set data, get data, set data. If three data are there in the data structure, data 1, data 2, data 3, and for these data members, accessor methods are created. Get data or set data 1, get data 2 or set data 2, get data 3 or set data 3. So means whenever the developers team is moving from an action oriented system to the object oriented system, what is the first step they have done? They first encapsulated the call processing block. So they encapsulated the call processing block in a class, and they created the different accessor methods for each of the data members. Now is it clear? Okay, then the functions were grouped into different controller classes. Then the controller classes can use the accessor method of the call processing class to collect the necessary data. See here, the functions are grouped into controller classes, and to access the data, each function is making use of the accessor methods, right, or accessor calls. See here, with the function 1, 2, 3 are grouped in one control class, and 4 and 5 in another controller class, 6 and 7 in one more controller class. And these functions access the data through accessor methods. Okay, all these functions are accessing the data by using the accessor methods. And once again, it is an improved migration from the original, but it is not the good object oriented design, because see here, the call processing class results in a guard class. Why? Because it holds all the data required for the operation of different controller classes. Okay, so when compared to the previous design, when compared to this particular design, obviously this is the improved design by using the object oriented approach. But once again, the problem with this design is the creation of a guard class. Here the guard processing block is created as the guard class. Okay, why it is treating as a guard class? Because it holds all the data that is required by all different controller classes or different functions. And the controller classes violate the rule of keeping the data and its behavior together. See here, we have the controller classes. They are not keeping the data and behavior. If they require the data and behavior, they have to contact the guard class through the accessor methods. Understood? This is the one solution for this particular legacy call processing system. Here, in this one, we have designed a new one by using the object oriented design. Okay, here what they done is they are everything they encapsulated in the form of a call processing block as a class, and different functions are grouped into different controller classes, and different accessor methods are created like get data 1 set data, get data 2 set data. Okay, different accessor methods are created for each of the data member. Then whenever the functions requires the data or the behavior, they are accessing it from the guard class through the accessor methods. Okay. And the problem with this design is it resulted in a guard class. Which one is the guard class here? The call processing block is the guard class because it holds all the data which is required by different controller classes, whereas the controller classes violates the heuristics such as keeping all the data and behavior in their own class. Okay, that heuristic is violated here. And hence, we'll move on to the better solution for this design is splitting the control processing block into pieces based on the collection of call processing functions. See here in the previous case, you see that we have the single call processing block and it holds all the data which is required by different controller classes, right? This one is modified into breaking up the call processing block into different pieces, and number of pieces that we are dividing it is based on the collection of call processing functions. If three call processing functions are there, then the call processing block is divided into three pieces. If four call processing functions are there, then the call processing block is divided into four different pieces. Understood? Clear now? Here, this is the better solution when compared to the previous design. See here, the call processing block itself is divided into pieces, and these number of pieces based on the number of call processing functions. Okay. Here, the collection of call processing functions and their portion of the data are grouped together based on the subset of the call processing block data which is used. Okay. So here we are grouping these call processing functions and the data based on what type of data the call processing functions uses. Okay. So this leads to an object-oriented design that possesses the qualities of decentralization. See here, there exists a decentralization and bidirectionally related data and behavior. In the previous case, see here the centralized data. Here also, that is the centralized data is there, right? If we keep the data in a centralized manner, then it leads to the guard class problem. In order to avoid the guard class problem, we are what we are doing, or we are breaking the call processing block into number of pieces based on the call processing function groups. Okay, and we are grouping the call processing functions and the data into different groups based on what type of data the call processing functions makes use of it. Okay, and this leads to the object-oriented design that possesses the qualities of decentralization. See here, this is in the decentralized manner. The data is divided among different call processing functions, and it is bidirectionally related data and behavior. So it exhibits bidirectionally data and behavior. So this is called as the better design when compared to the previous two designs. In the previous two designs, that results in a guard class problem because one of the class holds all the data required by different functions. And in order to avoid that, we are making use of the decentralized approach. In the decentralized approach, we are dividing the data part into number of pieces based on the number of controlling call processing functions. Clear? Any doubt in this? Any doubt in the guard class problem?
No, ma'am.
Okay. Next, we'll move on to the proliferation of classes problem. The next one is the proliferation of classes problem. First, you need to know what is a proliferation of class problem. What is proliferation? Proliferation means creating more number of classes. Okay, the proliferation of classes means creating a more number of classes. For example, consider that for one system, we need to design the system which consisting of, let us consider that it which only consisting of 10 classes. And if while designing the system, you go on creating the classes, and it leads to the system which consisting of large number of classes. So, which consisting of large number of classes, then the problem is said to be a proliferation of classes problem. We'll consider the previous example that I have discussed in the previous class. Here we have, see, we're having the application which is divided into 5 functions, F1, F2, F3, F4 and F5, where part of the data structure is shared by F1 and F2. Later, if any modification is done that is represented as X, then that should be informed to F1 and F2. Along with that, if the developer created the new function F6, which is also depending on X, and is gone developing the system or gone implementing the system without informing to F1 and F2. At the meantime, what the F1 and F2 are doing, they have created their own code by using the X value, and they started executing that, but they are not able to get the result. Why? Because without the knowledge of F1 and F2, F6 has modified the value X, and that leads to the problem, right? And it is solved by creating two classes D1 and D2. See here, that problem is solved by creating D1 and D2 class, where D1 and D2 class data can be used interchangeably by one another, right? So this is the solution. So here the solution is consisting of only two classes. That one we are discussing here. The problem is the application which consisting of 5 functions, and what the problem arises, and in the object oriented solution we have given this solution, or in the object oriented design we have given the solution that the design consisting of only two classes D1 and D2. Now consider that instead of only two classes, if 18 classes or 180 classes are there, means as the designer go on creating number of classes for the same problem or for the same design, then what happens? It leads to the creation of n number of or large number of classes, and that problem is called as the proliferation of classes problem. Understood now? Classes problem. Understood? Now let us consider that the design consisting of 180 classes. Okay, the design consisting of 180 classes. If the developer wants to modify any one class of 180 classes, okay, then the problem arises, and maintaining the large number of classes is also a difficult one, or it is the complex one, because as the classes increases, complexity increases, and if the classes are interdepending on one another, then if we are modifying any one class, then it affects the operation of or functionality of other classes. So maintenance problem arises when more number of classes are created. Clear? And that problem is called as proliferation of classes problem. Means as the design consisting of more and more or larger set of classes, then the design leads to proliferation of classes problem. Understood? We'll see the heuristic for that. So the heuristic 3.7 says that eliminate irrelevant classes from your design. Means whenever you are performing the design, identify whether the classes are relevant to your system design or not. If it is relevant, keep those classes. If not, just delete such type of classes. Okay. Then how will you identify whether the class is a relevant class or irrelevant class? So when we say that the class is an irrelevant class, if the class doesn't have any meaningful behavior in the domain of the system, then we say that the class is an irrelevant class. Understood? If the class doesn't have any meaningful behavior, then such class is said to be an irrelevant class. And how such classes are detected? The irrelevant classes are detected by looking for the classes that have no operations other than get, set, and print type functions. Okay, we are detecting the classes by looking into the operations of those classes means apart from set, get, and print type functions. Why we are not counting that? Because these sets, gets, and print operations are not counted. Why? Because they are not counted as a meaningful behavior. Because we too oftenly we are using those type of functions. If you consider an example here, if you consider the car, and if we define its color, okay, then that field is not generally an not interesting behavior. It is not an interesting behavior, right? Commonly we are using the what is the car color, and that we can treat it as an interested behavior, right? So hence the car, its color field is not generally an interesting behavior in the domain of the system. And there are notable exceptions to using get and set operations in the detection of irrelevant classes. One example is when we consider the usage of sensors and transducers. There once again we are using the get set operations. And the sensor make use of the get operation in order to get the information, and setting operation is used by the transducers. Okay, here we are considering the usage of get set operations for sensors and transducers. Get operation or getting is the behavior of the sensor, whereas setting is the behavior of transducers. And whenever you are removing or deleting the irrelevant classes, you should not necessarily remove the information from the design. Okay, here because the class is demoted into an attribute. So this is about heuristic 3.7. Next, we'll see the heuristic 3.8. It says that eliminate the classes that are outside of the system. Okay, means the classes which are not belonging to that system, we need to delete such type of classes. And this is a special type of or special case of the previous heuristic. And if the class is outside the system, then we treat that as an irrelevant class with respect to the given domain. And then it is very difficult to detect the classes which are outside the system. Okay, we cannot easily detect which are the classes are belongs to the system, or whichever the classes which are outside the system. It's very difficult to detect irrelevant classes, right? Then how we can do that? Through the successive iterations of the design, it eventually becomes clear that some classes do not require any methods to be written for them, and such classes are treated as the classes which are outside of the system. And what is the hallmark of such type of classes? The hallmark of such classes is an abstraction that sends the message into the system domain, but they doesn't receive any messages from the classes of that particular system. Now let us consider that class 1, class 2, class 3, class 4. Whereas class 2, class 3, class 4 are within the system, class 1 is outside the system. Then how we can identify that? The class 1 can send the information to the system or system domain, where this class 1 will not receive any information from the class 2, class 3 or class 4. Then the class 1 is identified as an irrelevant class. Then such irrelevant classes are need to be deleted or eliminated from the system. Understood? This is about heuristic 3.8, and in the next class we'll see the heuristic 3.9 and other topics of the chapter. Okay, any doubt in this heuristic 3.7 and 3.8? Yes? Hmm? Any doubt? ನಿಹಾರಿಕ ಹೊರಗೆ ಹೋಗ್ಬಿಟ್ರಾ ಕ್ಲಾಸ್ಗೆ? ಎನಿ ಡೌಟ್? ಇದ್ರಲ್ಲ ನಿಹಾರಿಕಾ ಇದ್ದಾರೆ, ಇಂಪನ ಆಲ್ 8 are there. Okay. So any doubt in the guard class problem of data form? Then example of absence of intelligence distribution, then heuristic 3.7, 3.8. Okay, if any doubt in today's topics that we discussed, you can ask. Otherwise, I'll end my class.